Here we go. Hi, everybody. I'm channeling Elizabeth Taylor tonight, you all, because tonight is our Pulpwood Queen and Timber Guys Book and Film Club. And I am so excited tonight because I am introducing and debuting my co-host, author, Robert Gwaltney. Yay! Say
Thank
hi,
you.
Robert.
Hey, everybody. I'm so happy to be here tonight, Kathy.
I am thrilled because I am so tired of talking to myself every week at my book and film club. So to have you on board is such a thrill for me. I'm very excited. I have on my leopard stole tonight because my house is freezing cold because I don't have any heat or electricity yet. So waiting on parts. But I am thrilled that you all are here from all around the country. So Mickey is a part of Robert Gwaltney's Writers Critique Group in Atlanta, Georgia, and he is an author. Will be featured next week on our Breathless Bubbles and Books. Lovelace Cook is my friend from way back. We finally got to meet in person at Fairhope, Alabama. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome. And I just talked, you all, with Teresa today, and I'm very excited to announce that I'll let you at the end talk about what you're doing with your new podcast. But tonight, we want to talk about something extra special. Being a big Tennessee Williams fan, I want you to know that I got rid of all my DVDs except for my entire collection of Tennessee Williams. And tonight, you all, we are going to be discussing Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. And in this little package that I got years and years ago, it's a streetcar named Desire, sweet bird of youth. Oh, one of my faves, the night of the iguana, the Roman spring of Miss Stone, Tennessee's William South, and Baby Doll. So, but tonight we are going to be talking about Elizabeth Taylor and Paul Newman and all the incredible cast of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. And then after we're done discussing it, if we're going to open it up for discussion, and then we want everybody to go to their favorite online streaming service to watch the show, and then we'll get back. So, Robert, before we even begin, and since this is your debut night at the Book and Film Club, let's hear a little bit about yourself. And you're in that great southern city, Atlanta, Georgia. So tell us all about yourself.
Well, I live here in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been in Atlanta since 2020. My partner and I live in a small neighborhood called on Essex Avenue at Adams Park. And by day, I'm a nonprofit executive, and in all the hours in between, I write Southern fiction.
Isn't that awesome? And he has a wonderful book coming out for our 2022 book club selection. It'll be our February book of the month, The Cicada Tree. Now, you pronounce it
Cicada.
cicada. I'm from
Cicada.
Kansas. We call them locusts back home too. So we are thrilled about your new book coming out, and I'm really thrilled. Tell us about your dapper outfit this evening as this Southern gentleman here that
Well,
you.
it's inspired by, of course, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. And what was really cool about that movie is that they were really subtle in how they costumed those individuals. Helen Rose, I think, was the costume designer, and they really kept it muted, whites and khakis. Elizabeth Taylor only made three costume changes in that whole film. I think she started off in this really pretty cream wool skirt and a white silk blouse. Then you saw her in that famous slip. And then,
Yes,
of
I
course,
have my
you did. You got-
1950s slip on. It's the only one I could find, and it's black, but
I
it's
love it.
not white. But anyway, I had to go all Elizabeth Taylor because I don't have the violet eyes, but I do have her eyebrows.
You do. You do. You look good as a brunette.
I was a brunette for about 10 years. I've gone every color you can possibly be. So, my mother always dyed her hair jet black, and I didn't even know it. She was like Elvis Presley. I didn't even know it that she had blonde to light brown hair, but she always dyed it jet black so she could look like Jackie Kennedy. She had her flip and the little side bang. And so, I never knew until I was in the 70s that my mother was not a brunette. Isn't that funny? And
Well, I
Elvis
love the
did the same
dark
thing.
color.
Yeah.
It's sort of like if you were Kathy L. Murphy's evil sister, like on Bewitched. Her
God,
wicked,
love
Was
that.
it Sabrina?
yeah,
Or
Sabrina.
Sabrina, or
That's what it
I
was.
Dream of Jeannie. You know, she had
Yeah.
the black ponytailed one on the show too.
I
So,
thought you
and
played the cousin.
I think even Ellie Mae on Beverly Hillbillies had a cousin show up one time with black hair. That was a big thing back in the day to have some kind of, you know, where you play dual roles. But
Well, there was
tonight we're going to begin with Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. And you know, what would you like to begin with? I have lots of stories, but I would like to hear from you, Robert.
Gosh, well, so I think I was first introduced to Tennessee Williams through the film adaptations of his plays, and then, of course, after I was introduced to the film, then I had an opportunity to go into the Roddenberry Memorial Library in Cairo, Georgia, and sneak out his plays. I don't think I was old enough to check them out, but I think I was 10 years old when I first saw Streetcar, and then probably maybe just a year later, I had the opportunity to see Cat on a Hot Tin Roof on a local cable channel. So I was in love with Tennessee Williams from a very early age.
Me too. Something about Tennessee Williams. I saw the films when I was a child. My mother never censored us on what we read or what we watched in movies. Of course, I didn't understand a lot of the adult undertones of the films. I just knew that I knew these characters because coming from a family, even though we weren't Southern, my children even called my father Big Daddy. So it was something that was very familiar to me and I could really relate. And it wasn't until later that I discovered and read all of his plays and all of his books. In fact, when we didn't have COVID, I would go to the Tennessee Williams Literary Festival in New Orleans. It's my second favorite festival compared to mine. And last time I was there, I got to meet John Lahr, who won the National Book Award for Tennessee Williams' Mad Pilgrimage of the Flesh. And I have umpteen books on Tennessee Williams, and I've walked his path, and it's got great photographs. And if you ever get a chance, the Tennessee Williams Literary Festival starts this week. I will be going online. It's virtual online like Girlfriend Weekend. And there's so many events that are free. I highly recommend that you go. The wonderful thing about the Tennessee Williams Literary Festival is they incorporate all the arts too. It's set at the Hotel Monteleone down off of Jackson Square. And at the end of the weekend, they have a Stella yelling contest, which is something to truly see. Thousands and thousands of people come to compete in that contest, and it is amazing. But I have found and discovered so many authors down there. And what's I think the most intriguing for me, because not only do I love films, I also love theater. If you love to go to Broadway plays and theater, you're going to meet almost every time you go some famous actor or actress from Broadway. And I remember one year it was Carol Baker who starred in Baby Doll. And this year they've got Alan Cummings coming, who I don't know if you ever saw him in Cabaret, but I was very excited about him being there. And you should check out the lineup. So lots of great books out there. You can order them directly from the Tennessee Williams. Just type in Tennessee Williams. I think it's .net, but just put Tennessee Williams Literary Festival in and you can get the full program. I've been sharing it and it is so much fun to go down there. And it's actually at a time where it's not so humid. So I really, really, really enjoy it. And they have lots of cocktail parties and lots of theater to go to. In fact, I've seen probably 2 or 3 Tennessee Williams plays that debuted that had never been seen before. And I know why. They're very risque. When I say risque, I'm not a prude, but I remember sitting in the theater with author Michael Morris, and we both were shocked at some of the things we saw on stage where they, but you've got to go. It's absolutely fabulous. And what's your favorite Tennessee Williams play or film or Which is your favorite?
Gosh, well, I would say I love Suddenly Last Summer that starred Montgomery Clift and Elizabeth Taylor. I've loved that. It was in black and white. And I saw it one summer when I was a teenager. And what I loved about the way that they handled the Tennessee Williams plays is that, that because of Hollywood production code, they couldn't be as overt about some of the gay things and other things that they could be in the plays. But I love the way that they hinted and skirted the issues. And to me, I think that that gave it even more authentic Gothic flair.
It's, to me, it's kind of like when you see a scintillating piece of lace and, in a slip. I think it's sexier in some way, more provocative than if you watch somebody walk nude across the screen. I personally like that. I don't want to see any kind of graphic sexuality in anything. It makes me extremely uncomfortable. And I have to say they handle it really well in the films. You don't really, when I was little, I never even understood what was going on with Brick and all the different themes in the different ones of the plays. But I think Cat on a Hot Tin Roof is my favorite. But of course, I love the one where the school teacher goes to on a Roman holiday, and
Oh, the
oh,
Rome
oh,
bring Mrs. Stone.
oh
Yeah,
my
that's
God.
wonderful.
Yeah, and the endings are always so shocking. So if you get a chance, I believe this set that I got, I ordered off online, years and years ago. I've had it forever, and I just couldn't part with it, just like my DVD copy of To Kill a Mockingbird and The Wizard of Oz. There are some films, I don't even have a DVD player anymore. I guess I've got to get a new one. But I just could never part with them because they're such a part of my growing up and the love of Southern Gothic. Southern Gothic is a theme that I think nobody captures better than Tennessee Williams. And to hear all the experts that come to that Tennessee Williams Festival and talk about him in depth and everything, but you give me a good Southern Gothic novel and I'm lost forever. That's why I'm really excited about your book coming out,
Thank you.
Robert. It's just right up my personal reading alley. But in this movie, we've got, of course, Big Daddy and his wife. What
Big
every
Mama.
single character in this film is so well cast. I mean, there is, I don't know if, I haven't delved into it enough to know if that was just really researched the way it was, but the redheaded sister-in-law.
Madeline Sherman, who played
Oh,
Lady Pollitt. Yeah, she was wonderful.
she was
She,
perfect.
Kathy, she's only one of two, I think, that actually were in the play. Uh,
Really.
yeah, and Burl Ives. And,
Yeah.
and I heard that that Tennessee Williams actually wrote the part with Burl Ives in mind. And he was
Is
just like a
that,
folk singer before that.
well, I always think of Burl Ives as Frosty the Snowman. It's just, it just goes to show you the range of actors back then. Now we have, I think the tendency is if you play a cop in a movie, you'll play a cop in a movie, or if you play a dad, but I really love it when you see actors playing parts. That's why I love Meryl Streep. You never know what she's going to do. That's why I love Shah Rukh Khan. You never know what kind of, he's played a serial killer, the king of romance. You just never know. And to see the range in actors but Elizabeth Taylor is an iconic actress. She was one of a kind. She had those infamous violet eyes, and she started out as a child actor, when she was with in National Velvet. And we watched her literally grow up right before our eyes. And she blossomed into and she too, I mean, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? That was probably, her and Richard Burton were probably, I think, were they in the throes of their first or second marriage? I'm trying to remember at the time, but
I think they were at the beginning, and she was just like in her 30s when she played that part.
and she gained, I remember they said she gained 35 pounds to play this role. And I thought, shoot, that's me every other month. I'm going up and down the scales. I'm actually more of a Virginia Woolf character today than I was her and Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. But and then Paul Newman.
Oh boy, yeah.
Did you ever see the very first movie he was in, which was set in Rome back in historical Roman times? He was terrible. He was probably just as bad as you can imagine. But then when he was in HUD, with Patricia O'Neill, oh my goodness. And then later on in life, both him and his wife, Joanne Woodward, people invested in actors, studio heads would have them, play all these roles, but you got to see movie stars go through a lifetime of playing movies. Men usually went longer than women, but we were fortunate to see Elizabeth Taylor go for a really long time, and of course Paul Newman too. And I don't know, do you know what happened to Burl Ives? I don't remember when he
Gosh, I don't know what year he passed away, but I think he lived, I think he had a pretty long productive life. I'm not quite sure. He was young when he played Big Daddy. The gentleman, I think it's Jack Carson, who played his son Gooper. Burl Ives was only a couple of years older than Jack Carson when they filmed the movie.
It's always interesting. Do you guys remember the Bonanza? Do you know the father on Bonanza was the same age as the oldest son?
That's crazy.
I mean, isn't that crazy?
I know.
I mean, all those little bits of trivia always fascinated me. And why is it in this time range of the 1960s, when we had so many television sitcoms, it's funny to me now, but almost every one of my favorite television sitcoms, the father was gay in real life. And, it was years later that I learned that on the television show Bewitched, the mother was, she was also a gay, and I had no idea.
Agnes Moorehead.
Yes, Agnes Moorehead. And my mother went to Hollywood when she was in college back in the 50s to try to make it as a movie star. And her agent and her went out to dinner with Agnes Moorehead and her agent. And I remember my mother said she was just so beautiful in person. And my mother told me that she had the most incredible skin. It was flawless. And, I never really thought of Agnes Moorehead as flawless with that turquoise eyeshadow and black eyeliner when she was.
Hard to pull that off.
But she played quite the ingenue when she was younger. But back to this show, what do you think? I've read a lot of books on Tennessee Williams and everything, but where do you think that he gets so many of his ideas? I know his family was always an interesting part of his background, but the man was a storyteller. And he could tell Southern Gothic like nobody I've ever seen. In fact, I can't think of one other person for the body of work, because I have every single one of his plays. And I think just about every book that's ever been written about him, except I was talking to Robert Yuall about, you were telling me about one book that had him fictionalized as a character and the main character. What was that book?
It's titled Leading Man or Leading Men by Christopher Castellani. And it's a wonderful read.
I've got to read that book because that's one I've somehow missed. And I think that Christopher Castellani has written a lot of books because I think he's been at the Tennessee Williams. But just like any festival that you go to other than mine, they have many going on concurrent. So it's hard to get to everything. That's why I like my book festival. If you come, you get to hear every single author that's featured rather than you have to pick and choose who you go to. I don't want to miss out on anybody. But the other thing that is so wonderful about is the setting, this home that they're all in, and the porches and the verandas and the drinks. They're always having the drinks and
I call this
cocktail.
mendacity. This
Yeah,
is a special cocktail.
I remember, my mother was of that era where they wore the pumps and the pearls and the cinch waist dresses. And I remember thinking that was what it was like to be a grown up. And then I went through high school in the 70s and everything changed. So I was so confused. Anybody else out there, Kathleen, were you confused? Because, you grew up thinking you were going to tie your apron on over your pretty dress and pumps and fix these meals. And by the time, we were doing fondue pots and, and dipping bread in melted cheese and crazy stuff like that. And they wore their hair long and straight. And it was the days of Cher, and totally changed everything. I feel like we kind of grew up straddling two different eras of women. But Elizabeth Taylor was the iconic woman that was considered to be one of the most beautiful women in the world. And then, of course, the diamonds and the jewels and the opulent lifestyle. And then her championing AIDS and her friendship with Michael Jackson later on. And I was trying to think how old she was when she did her last movie. It was something called About Broads. Do you remember it? I think it had Debbie Reynolds.
Like Tough Old Broads or something like
Yeah,
that.
and it was kind of a campy
It was.
film. It wasn't done very well, but they were all in it, and they had to all have been close to
In their 70s, right?
70s or getting close to 80s. And I was trying to think who else was in it. I know it was Debbie Reynolds, which that's interesting.
Yeah, I know. After all of that scandal, right?
Oh, with Eddie Fisher, and yeah, that was really, but it's still going on today, right? Right. So, and then I wonder what happened to those children. That was,
The no-neck monsters.
they were.
Yeah, no-neck monsters is what the Maggie the cat would call them. And they were awful.
They were awful kids. They were spoiled, petulant little brats. And but Big Daddy really favored, Maggie. And secretly I think he had a thing for her, and he just couldn't understand what was wrong with his, his son,
They didn't have children by then.
Yeah. So, and then the mother, Big Daddy's wife, she was reminded me of so many women I grew up with of that era, because they were just, whatever he says, oh yes, what, let me get you that drink, whatever. It was a interesting time frame, and I wonder just how many young people have seen that movie today. They need to watch it because it's quite fascinating, with the dynamics of the father son and the sister-in-law, and the greed of wanting, the wealth of the family. And but there are themes and tones that we see over and over in films today, but never so out there where we all see it, and it always fascinated me. What was a scene in the movie that really sticks out in your mind, Robert?
Oh my gosh, there's so many wonderful ones. But yeah, I mean, I love that moment early on when Maggie's just so frustrated, and there's that wonderful dialogue where she says, all the time I feel like a cat on a hot tin roof, and then
That's my favorite scene.
Yeah.
And she's running around in the slip and just very provocative, and he isn't paying any attention to her.
such desperation, with Maggie. Always accustomed to sort of being the center of attention and being able to trade with her looks, and then her husband is just paying her no attention. And then there's that wonderful line, he says, Maggie, what is the victory of a cat on a hot tin roof? And of course she says, just staying on it, I guess, as long as she can.
Yeah, till you have to hop off. That's kind of what that was the overlying theme of it too. But and it was such a clever title because it's like we've all heard those phrases through the years. Can you guys, any of you guys, think of one that you heard your parents say? My grandmother had a million of these kind of things where she'd say, uh, I'm just trying to think of one right offhand that uh, like cat on a hot tin roof or, you know,
Well, I can remember my grandmother Gwaltney would when things would be going well and that they lived out on a farm, and she would always say, "It looks like we're going to be knee high in cotton this year."
yes, that's a good one. Knee high in cotton. Or my grandfather was a little bit more colorful. He was a Kansas cowboy, and I remember I'd be riding in the truck with him, and he'd go, "Oh, cat soup," because when I was a kid, I read the ketchup bottle one day and I called it cat soup, and so that kind of stuck. And so they called me cat soup, and he goes, "Oh, cat soup, we got to stop at this barn because he goes, I've got to pee so bad my teeth are floating." I just remember, oh, that's yuck.
That's funny.
But to this day, or he always had lots of references to having to pee. I don't know why. Or, I have to pee. Uh, I have I have to go so bad as I'm like a Russian racehorse. I don't know what that meant. It was just these little phrases that they used to have that old timey phrases as Revis Wortham, one of my author, he always posts those. You don't hear so much anymore. And it seems like to me the South has more of them than anybody. And I kind of think I know why. We've got the influx of the Irish, into, and Irish are born storytellers. We've got the African Americans that, came over and, their influence of storytelling. And we've just got all these different people's storytelling that come together, and you see it in the songs, in the what they call the Negro spirituals that we used to have, and we see it in the next week we're going to, everybody, so you'll know, next week we're going to really hit a political hotspot because we're going to be watching Gone with the Wind. And now everybody's trying to ban Gone with the Wind. But that was one of my favorite books growing up because most people haven't read the book. They've seen the film and they think they've read the book. But actually, that's just a small bit of really. The book is more about Ireland and Tara and the land, and she was also married multiple times. And but the thing about,
Like Elizabeth Taylor.
exactly. And the other thing is when they get a story, they hang on to it for dear life. It's like I don't ever want to take away the love that I had for Cat on a Hot Tin Roof or Gone with the Wind, because I didn't see the adult themes that people are upset about now. I didn't see the racism. I didn't see the all the undertones that are visible in the film. What I saw was a great story. And it's also very telling of the times. And I don't think we need to rewrite our own history. I think we learned from it and we need to keep reading it so that we won't make the same mistakes that we did in the past. But how do you feel about that, Robert?
About films like Gone with the Wind that are certainly very sensitive. Well, I think that we're in a place where we just have to be very cautious of how other people come to the table and their experiences and how they feel. And I think that we have to look through that work through a different, more modern lens, of course.
Right. Well, and we have to take those things into consideration because, I'm of the belief that everybody should be treated the same, regardless of race, color, religion, economic background, where you come in the world. I just think that we all have these stories of our journey and how we're evolving as a people. I mean, we were getting better. You know, we had all the civil um, rights things happening in the 60s and the marches and everything, and but now we're kind of backsliding again, and I think it's because people are not, they don't know their own history, our own history, our own country's history. And I'm a firm believer that the history books that we were taught from when we were kids always tell the story from the victor's perspective rather than from both sides of the perspective. And that's why the Pulpwood Queens International Book Club is all about finding the story from different perspectives and different viewpoints. And I, one author, an example that I met and then I got into reading her books is Lisa C. She's Chinese American and she's fifth generation. And she started out with On Gold Mountain and now she's gone all the way, you know, through the history of back centuries ago to the history of today and how far the, you know, the Chinese Americans have come. And then yet we heard what happened. Was it in Atlanta? Where was it that they had the
Yeah,
Asian?
yeah, there were actually walks today about against Asian hate. I actually have a few friends who I saw on Facebook that were out supporting the movement early on today.
Well, I have, you know, a lot of friends that are of all different Asian countries or mixed, you know, and it's true. We tend to, and they lump them all together. And, you know, there's a big difference between somebody that's Malaysian and somebody who is Korean and somebody who's Chinese and Japanese. And people go, they just think of them as all the same. It's kind of like saying, you know, here in the United States that, you know, all white people are the same, when in fact, you know, some of us aren't even white. I mean, I always check the other box, because how many of you have done the ancestry.com? Has anybody done it here? I did it because I had been told my whole life that I was Cherokee Indian. I mean, I think every American in the country said that they were some kind of Native American Indian. So I decided that I was doing how the West was won, and I wanted to have it from, you know, both perspectives of the Native Americans and then the Western movement. And come to find out, I don't have any Native American, according to Ancestry.com. In fact, I thought I was predominantly Scott Irish, and I'm not. I'm Northern European, and I'm, you know, German and Russian and Welsh and all this different stuff. I think I'm 19% Scott Irish and 3% Norwegian. You know, it's fascinating to me. You know, we're mutts. I mean, and don't, I'm sorry, I've had all these rescue dogs. I always think my mutts are the best. My little cats and dogs are the best pets ever, but we're a mixture of everything. And we all come from somewhere, right?
Absolutely.
So when this show was done, I think this was when everybody romanticized the South. I mean, I'm trying to think when Gone with the Wind came out in 19, it was it the, I'm trying to remember the year. I actually had an author who went to the premiere of it in Atlanta when she was a little girl. Gosh, when was that movie?
Was it 1935
I
somewhere
was
else?
going to say it was the 30s. It wasn't the 40s, it was the 30s. But, um, you know, and now when I actually went to the museum there, I was shocked because I expected, like Gone with the Wind, a big spectacle. And it's just basically now a little house surrounded by skyscrapers with just a little building that they do events in. I mean, they have really, the city has just kind of moved in around it. And interestingly enough, when I used to live in Jefferson, Texas, we have a Gone with the Wind museum that just blows that one completely away. Supposedly, Bobby Hardy, who runs that museum, has the second largest collection of anybody in the world. And it's pretty amazing to go to her museum. She has built it looks like it's a historic home, but it's like a Terra home. And every room in the house is Rhett Butler's room and Scarlett O'Hara's room. There's even Mammy's room. I mean, it's got every character in and she used to do home tours, but I think she's just now doing museum tours. But if you ever get to historic Jefferson, Texas, it's worth going to see, because I've never seen so much memorabilia, and it was right there where I used to live. But the Elizabeth Taylor, I'm trying to remember, she has a son. Does she have one son or?
Well, I know that she has at least one son,
One
and he was an
son.
actor. Yeah, he was like a soap opera actor for a while, but I don't know if she has any other children.
I don't know. I don't remember. And then, of course, Paul Newman and his wife, Joanne Woodward, they had children. In fact, one of my authors, my Pulpwood Queen authors, lived next door to them up in Connecticut. And she used to babysit for their kids. Can you imagine? So when I went up to visit her, her name is Prill Boyle, and she lives up in Connecticut. She took me all around and showed me where they used to live. And of course, they don't live there anymore. But it's all fascinating to me. But when you think about all the iconic actors and actresses in the world, how many of them really have a place where you can go and see their homes or where they lived? I mean, really go through them. You can go to Graceland, Elvis Presley. You can go see Loretta Lynn's home. But even, I don't even think Dolly Parton.
I think her cabin. I think that there's either. I think that she. Yeah, I think the little cabin that she grew up in. I think they have.
Well, Loretta Lynn's, Tawana and I, coming back from Nashville one time, we used to always pull in there and eat at the restaurant, and we decided to take the tour. That's fascinating. It's world class. I mean, it's really done well. And I was expecting kind of like Branson when I was in high school, Silver Dollar City kind of thing. No, it's very well done. But even Elizabeth Taylor or Paul Newman, or I'm trying to think of some other, Clark Gable, all these, where there is no place you can, maybe if you go to Beverly Hills, you can get a map of where they used to live, but to actually tour the homes, even Michael Jackson's home, you can't tour. So there are very few. Marilyn Monroe, there's very few places that you can go in the country. And actually, that's why, how many of you have been to Graceland? Have you been there? I've been there like 7 times. And what is interesting is the first time I went there, they had the Flintstone jelly glasses in the cupboard and the dish towels from Breeze soap. And now it's not that way anymore. They've had it curated to the best china from the time period. Now they still got the jungle room. I mean, with the carpeted walls and the mirrored room and the things. But he used to have, dogs playing pool in the pool room, and now they've got replicas of Picasso. I think it's ruined it myself. I kind of like the jelly glasses in the cupboards and seeing that he used the, I don't know if you remember the commercials from when I was a kid, but it would be Dolly Parton and Porter Wagner, and they go, "Gee, Porter, you brought me flowers." And she'd pull a dish towel out of the Breeze detergent soap. And I can remember that was a big deal to buy that soap so you could get that towel. And, that's long gone. That's long gone. And they even redid the Heartbreak Hotel. It's cool, but it's not the same as it was when it first went there. But I have a real good friend that lives in Collierville, Tennessee, so I like to go there and see how they continually are adding to the collection, more costumes, more Vegas stuff, and it's quite fascinating. But we will, the only way we can really see those places now is the films, is to go back to see the sets from the films and to watch the films. And even Gone with the Wind, the original set, it's not at that museum in, I think at one time it used to be in Atlanta, but I think it all got torn down.
There's a front door you can. They're actually at the little event venue that you were referencing. There's
Yeah.
the front door, and then there's that iconic portrait of Scarlett O'Hara that hung over the fireplace that the Rhett Butler actually throws the whiskey at.
Yes. And at that museum in Jefferson, they've got the chicken foot dress. Remember the green velvet drapes with the chicken feet
Yes.
hanging from it? They've got one of those. She's got Bonnie Blue's her costume on a mannequin. She's got two or three of they made like 4 or 5 costumes of those. And so she's got several of them and she's got them on mannequins there. It's very well done. But Elizabeth Taylor, I don't know whatever happened to her diamonds. Does anybody know?
I do not.
I don't know, because they were worth literally millions.
She might have taken them with her.
Well, more than likely Christie's or Sotheby's or one of those places had a sale, because I know they did that with Jackie Kennedy Onassis and Marilyn Monroe, and all those things have gone to private collectors and different things like that. So I would say what we need to do is open it up to conversation. If you guys have any questions or discussion or anything you want to, how many of you have seen Cat on a Hot Tin Roof? Have you seen it? Mickey, you have never seen it.
Mickey Dubrow, you're in so much.
Oh my gosh. And you're a Southern writer and you have not seen it. You have to see it. It's actually, did it get any Academy Awards?
It was nominated for many, but it did not win any Academy
Awards. I didn't
Awards.
think so. I didn't think so.
The play won the Pulitzer.
Yes. And well, yes. And then like last week we did All About Eve, and it was nominated for every award and won, that starred Bette Davis. That's one of my favorite films of all time. But if you have not seen it, you've got to watch it. You might even be able to watch it on YouTube. What I do is I go to YouTube first and see if it's available for free. And then I check with my streaming services, because I do Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime. And you usually can find it somewhere. I imagine the Turner Broadcasting Network has it. But it's such an iconic film, and you can still order it for DVD. So if you've got a Netflix, where you can still, do they still send out the DVDs anymore for Netflix?
There are people who still get them.
I actually had one of the biggest video collections ever, and I gave it all to my sister because it took so much room, and now you can find almost anything online. And even if you have to pay a couple of dollars to watch it, it's better than taking up all that space in your house. So it's a lot of fun. So we are going to be doing this every Saturday. And next week, we're going to be doing Gone with the Wind, which you might have to do that in a 2-part series. Watch the first part of the film on Saturday and then maybe watch the end of it on Sunday, because it has an intermission in between. It's so long. I don't even think anything of watching it all the way through, because I've been watching all these Bollywood films and they all are 2 or 3, sometimes close to 4 hours long.
Wow.
And I happen to think, when I love a story, I want all of it. I love miniseries, and I love these series they do on all the stations now, because I don't want to leave those characters. It's one of those things where you hate to say goodbye. And I remember when the sequel to Scarlet, Scarlet came out from Gone with the Wind. I was back in my bookseller days, and we did a big window, and I had the big hoop dress and all the stuff I borrowed. It just wasn't the same. You know, it just was not the same as it was
Like
then.
Alexandra Ripley wrote that, right?
Yes. And it was, I remember Pat Conroy was asked to write the book, and he said, I don't think I'm going to do that. And that was his mother's favorite story. It was the first book his mother read to him when he was like 4 or 5 years old. Can you imagine? Do you remember when you read the book, the Civil War scene where Scarlett went to go help at this makeshift? That was the most gory, graphic scene I'd ever read in a book. And I was pretty young when I read it, and I was just horrified. It was pretty graphic, but war is, y'all. We tend to romanticize so many things, but that was a horrific war. And then poor, the South was burning, and it's one of those things that I wonder if my grandson, what will be his take when it comes time for him to watch these movies. Will they even watch them? I'm going to open this up for all of you. What is your favorite genre of movies that you like to watch? Because as we're doing this, we want to know what people want to see. So talk to us. Tell us what you like.
Well, I was going
Kathy, go ahead, Teresa.
I'm sorry. I was just going to interject that when I was doing some reading about Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, that Williams originally wrote it as a short story.
Yes.
Which I didn't know until I read that. And then I was reading of all the different adaptations. So he was not apparently really thrilled with the movie because it muted some of the sexual innuendos that he very much explored in the play.
Oh, believe me, if you go to New Orleans and you go one of the plays, you're going to be, I'll never forget going to this play. I can't even remember what the name of it was, but it never played in a theater. And I'm not going to go into the whole genres, but there's a scene in it where a girl strips, and she takes all her clothes off, and she's changing clothes right in front of the audience. And I've seen shows where they've done some of this, and I've gone to a lot of Broadway shows, but I mean, this was like, and she was being watched by this character. I was like, I was sitting with one of my guy author friends, and he was going, oh my. And then there was a couple on the other side of us, a gay couple, and they got the giggles because it really got intense there for a while. And I thought something was going to happen on stage. I didn't know if they've ever had sex on stage, but it almost happened. And I was like, oh, please, no. And then the lights go dark. And I thought, oh, and we were thank goodness, because we were both just so worried about what was going to happen, and it did not. But I imagine, he wrote in his short stories, he put a lot of and I'm sure. But it was the 60s, y'all. It was the 60s.
Yeah, it was the late 50s, I think. And what I thought was fascinating was, so you can look at that movie and get a sense of what was appropriate or culturally acceptable for that time. I think that's one of the fascinating things about going back and watching these classics, is that you realize how far we've come in our public conversation, in our movies, with these sort of repressed ideas of those times. And I think Tennessee Williams just, that was such a big part of that, alcoholism and suicide and all of these big issues that were just muted, I think, a little bit. But one of the other things I read that I thought was, that I didn't know until you prompted me to do this. I love that you're focusing on films this way and having us look back. It's been a long time since I saw this movie, but it's been adapted and remade many, many, many times. And in fact, I know that you just mentioned Bollywood, that in 2016, there's a Bollywood production called Kapoor and Sons that draws direct inspiration from Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
That is so cool.
I watched that film and I did not realize that. I'm going to have to go back and watch that. And that is a wonderful thing too, when Bollywood is known for taking American themed movies, whether Shakespeare or Jane Austen movies like Bride and Prejudice is based on Pride and Prejudice. They're known for doing that. But I'll tell you, a lot of times it's hard for me to even see the similarities, and then sometimes but isn't that what storytelling is? I mean, it's adaptation through the years. But we say that we've come so far. Actually, in my grandmother's time, which was the 20s and 30s, and even when she was a little girl, born in the 1913 or something, it was pretty scandalous. I mean, the movies, the girls wore nothing. They were like these sparkly gowns and beaded gowns, and they just had the beads in just the right places. They didn't have much on, and they did not wear any undergarments. And so,
The good old days.
the good old days. And then it went, when you got into the 40s and 50s, it got more conservative. And then, then we've gone back and forth through the years, and who knows what people will be wearing in 2030, I don't know, but it is fascinating. And it is whether it's in the costumes or the music or it's all storytelling. And unless we, go back and look and compare, have comparisons, we really, we lose the lessons that we have in a lot of these stories. And, we basically go to the movies to be entertained. We don't want to go to be preached at. We don't want to go to movies to feel like something was, a theme was forced down or a political point was. We go to be entertained. And I feel like storytelling in reading is the best entertainment in the world, because we bring our own experiences, we bring our own education and our own perceptions into the understanding of what we're seeing. That's why it's so great to have discussion, because where one person can be offended by Mammy's red petticoat, Rhett brought Mammy a new red petticoat, they could say, oh my goodness. And I just thought it was him just being a big tease with her, but some people could find that just completely offensive. Mammy was my favorite character because she's the only one who had any sense. I felt like in the whole movie, the dad was slightly mad and the mother was just living so proper. And I don't know who my favorite character was in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. I think it was the relationships. That was my favorite part of the dynamic of the show, how each person played off of another person. It wasn't any one particular. I can't really say that, Elizabeth Taylor was my favorite character. And at times I just didn't like that brick guy at all. I was just like Paul Newman. I always loved him, but in that movie, he was so, I don't know, defeatist or,
Cruel.
what was it?
Cruel.
Yeah.
He was in a way very cruel to Maggie, and he's taking out his own self-hate and loss out on her.
Well, and I read a quote the other day on Facebook about people that do hateful things. It's really not even when they target people, it's really they hate themselves. They hate themselves so much they try to make themselves feel better by making somebody else feel bad. But that never works. It never works. Bullying is bullying. And but I think a lot of people, they don't even know they're doing it until they're, when they grow up, hopefully they realize that, that's not the way to be. And they're also mirroring their parents, what their parents are teaching them at home. So,
Kathy, there was one really cool, interesting fact about Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. It's very much unlike the other adaptations of Tennessee Williams' work. Then, they actually planned to film Cat on a Hot Tin Roof in black and white. After they cast Paul Newman and Elizabeth Taylor, given her gorgeous violet blue eyes and his stunning blue eyes, they decided that they would film it in color. And they were
Absolutely.
such beautiful young people.
Well, I understand that. And I understand, film noir and how it creates a mood and everything. And it does make it seem more Southern Gothic. But the thing about the South is it's very colorful. I mean, you think of, right now the South is in bloom, the tulip trees and the dogwoods, everything's coming into the daffodils and everything. You think of it as lush and blooming. And I always think of when they do black and white movies like Batman, a Gothic New York City or Philip Marlowe. I love those noir, LA Confidential. But I can see, and look what happened in The Wizard of Oz, where they started out, a lot of people see Kansas as bleak and black and white. And then when they go to Oz, everything went to color. And, actually Kansas is where I'm from. It's quite beautiful. It's not as stereotypical as people think. But unless we go there, I mean, we can go there by film, but unless we go to those places, I was talking to Robert about going to Monroeville, Alabama. I
Oh,
made the trip for the 50th anniversary of To Kill a Mockingbird. And I've never been so surprised in my life because there's the courthouse exactly the way it was in the film. I mean, I stood right where Gregory Peck as Atticus Finch, stood in the court. I just get chills thinking about it. And the museum, and then the homes are no longer there, Truman Capote and Harper Lee. But when you go to those places, it is still a sleepy little town. I mean, it's not been modernized much. I mean, there aren't even any hotels to stay there. I mean, it's really small, sleepy little southern town, and you can picture it exactly the way you would have pictured, Macomb in the movie, the way it was in Monroeville, exactly back in when Harper Lee was there. But does anybody do literary road trips to places where they read about?
So I did one for my 40th birthday
Oh, where'd you go?
over a decade ago. We started out well. So it was Tim. It was my best friend and a good friend of ours. And we had to start the morning at IHOP, but we traveled we traveled down to see Flannery O'Connor's Andalusia, and so we went on the tour, and it was wonderful. So we did the tour there. Then we went over to where they filmed, where they still had the set, and we ate at the Whistle Stop Cafe where they filmed Fried Green Tomatoes. And then we traveled back. We had fried chicken, and with the fried green tomatoes. And then we traveled back that night and went to the Actors Express Theater, and we saw a production of Suddenly Last Summer. So it was Flannery
Oh,
O'Connor, Tennessee Williams, Fannie Flagg. It was a great day. It was a
that
special day.
I've taken my Pulpwood Queens on many, many literary trips. And, we went through Eudora Welty's house in Jackson, went to the library, the Eudora Welty Library in Jackson, Mississippi. I highly recommend you go there. And I donated a book to the library. They have in the center of it all the, the authors in Mississippi with their books autographed in cases. It's really well worth going to her home. The books that she had just exactly as she left them are still exactly that way. And they haven't changed her house at all. They've kept it exactly the same. And there's so many houses, I still want to go down to Hemingway's home and down in the Keys. I would love to see where they dress like they have the Hemingway contest, who looks the most like Ernest Hemingway. I'd like to see that. But the Tennessee Williams, if you get a chance, go online. There's lots of free events. And I don't know if they do that Stella thing live, but it's something to see. If you ever get to go to, I could live in New Orleans. It's a story unfolding every single day. And we were talking about Joanne Woodward. Did you tell me that she was from Georgia? I was thinking she was from.
So she has connections in a small town called Thomasville, Georgia, just like 30 minutes where I grew up in Cairo. She and her husband, Paul Newman, traveled to the outskirts of Cairo, Georgia, but there's a plantation called Susina Plantation, and they stayed there. And they were hosted by a friend of mine who I was childhood friends with. So so they were out and about around those parts sometimes. Joanne Woodward would come to Thomasville. I think she actually was Grand Marshal of the Rose City Parade one year.
Wow. Well, it's a lot of fun. When I went to Charleston, of course, I had to go to the Citadel. I went to the Pat Conroy Center. I did not make the John Barrett tour in Savannah, but I will do that next time I go back. But I find it fascinating when you go to authors' homes. And I've been to all, the Little House on the Prairie home in Kansas and Independence. And it's just exactly the way you would picture it to be. It's very quaint and old fashioned and just out in the middle of nowhere. But, and we've done literary tours of New York City, of Venice, and we've walked the same streets as Samuel Clements. In fact, one of the homes we stayed in Italy, an American photographer, filmmaker married into this kind of Italian dynasty family, and they have turned their vineyards and everything into an inn type situation. And one night at dinner, he brought us all the books from the library, the house, that were signed by everybody from, the Picture of Dorian Gray to Samuel Clements to, I'm trying to think of some of the other authors that they used to take the grand tour of Europe, and authors would, and they go over there, and artists would go to Paris, and they had all these signed original first edition books. And I was just like, I cannot believe I'm holding this book, that's been signed by Mark Twain or Samuel Clements. It's fascinating. So, and hopefully as soon as this opens back up, we'll be doing another one. And we think we've got a bunch of authors that want to go with us on a trip we think we're going to go to France, Italy, and Greece. So be paying attention, you guys. We're going to
sign us all up.
I know, let's all go. So any other questions you want to wrap up about Tennessee Williams or anything other than watching the show? Now's the chance to jump in. Okay, then what we're going to do is you've got a few minutes to just catch up with us. Mickey, let's begin with you first. Next week, you're going to be going on Breathless Bubbles and Books.
Yes.
And you're going to be blogging all week, and you're going to be featured on our online book club. And tell us just give a little tease about your book.
It's a dystopian thriller about what America would be like if it were a true Christian nation.
Yes, it's called American Judas, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I thank you, Robert Gwaltney, for bringing Mickey and all your writers group into our writers club. And I thank you for doing that for us. And we will be adding you in on our 2022 list. And then Kathleen, you're going to be our author for the first week in April for the Flying Cutterbucks for our book of the month. And I was sharing you again today. You're just everywhere with your book.
So Kathy, this is, Melissa made me a brand new, well, where is it? Here we go. So this is going to be on all of my banner.
Very nice.
So
I love
she had, so we've got red, yellow, and pink. I love pink. And she did the pink in the pink font. So I just got that up on banners. I'm going to put it on Twitter, on my website and all that. But thank you again, because it's a dream come true. and I'm excited to be here. And it's my 4th novel. I'm about halfway through my 5th. So I've been in the writing cave. So I have missed, maybe I was telling you in a message today, I have missed. But real quick, I want to say, y'all were talking about Gone with the Wind. That's why I got up. It's somewhere in here. Do you know what I actually love more than the novel? I loved the book Road to Terra about Margaret Mitchell, the 10 years it took. I was very young. I was in my early 20s when I finally read the novel, and then The Road to Terra came out, and my mother sent me her copy. I actually loved reading more about the author and her 10 years writing that, and the editor that came down to the South looking for the great American Southern novel or whatever. He took her manuscript back in shoeboxes on the train, all those stories and pictures of pages on the floor. Back in the day before we all had, cut and paste on computer, we did it, scissors and by hand and stuff. But anyways, but this is fascinating. And I did see Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, but I think I was little. And I think I saw it at my grandmother's on her big color TV, and I probably shouldn't have been watching it then. So I don't remember all the real stuff.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. Well, we're excited about it. In Jefferson, they had a kind of a Road to Terra weekend, and they brought in the actress who played Bonnie Blue, who was then in her 70s, and they had a tea. And I've got in my house somewhere a picture of her with Rhett Butler and the pony signed by her. And I did have an original poster from Gone with the Wind that was given to me, had it framed for years. And one of my Pulpwood queens was in my house one day, and she goes, "Is that an original poster?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And she goes, "My grandson is the biggest Gone with the Wind fan." And she goes, "If you ever want to get rid of that, I would love it." And I said, "Well, it's one of my favorites, but let me ask my kids." And I asked my daughters, and they said they didn't have any interest in having it. So I gave it to her, and her grandson now has it. And to me, it's like, isn't it more important for it to go to somebody that loves it than to sell it? So I gave it away, and I have the original Mary Badham, who played Scout and Gone with the Wind. I have a lot of signed things of hers, and someday, I may give it back to the museum or something. But I feel like, all these things I've collected all my life, there's somebody out there who will probably just cherish it someday. I'd rather give it to them than sell it. So now, Lovelace, we met years ago. What's going on in your world?
Oh, Kathy, I am actually in about 2 weeks getting ready to launch my podcast.
Ooh, tell us about it.
It's called Bollywood and Books.
Oh my gosh.
I know it's right up your alley. It's a literary romp through India.
I'm going to be signing up. Because
I'm going to have to
my
put
number
you on
one place that I want to go now, because I've watched every Bollywood film out there. I mean, and now multiple times I've gone back to Mother India. I've watched all the beginning ones. I'm watching the new ones. I've watched everything Shah Rukh Khan. It's fascinating to me, the storytelling, and that's one of the places I want to go is to India. And I want to go to a Bollywood film in India with all the mass people. I just want to see it, So when are you launching this?
It may be April 1st. I mean, this has been an incredible year. I've been working full time doing COVID-19 outreach, which has made it difficult to do a whole lot of creative things. But to keep my sanity, I've gotten involved in learning about audio recording and editing. And I had a plan to do a podcast, but I just really didn't know how to
I want
do
to
it.
introduce you to Teresa, because Teresa is a podcaster.
Well, would love it.
And
I've
you guys need to know each other because totally different subjects. Okay, Teresa, now tell her what about your podcast that you have just launched.
I did. Today was the first episode of a podcast that I've called Desideratum. Desideratum is a Latin word that means fundamental or essential things. And I personally think that storytelling, especially auditory, the oral storytelling, is an essential thing. So I'm celebrating storytellers, the art of telling, and the joy and the journey of listening in a weekly podcast. And I have about 10 episodes that I'm in the process of producing, but the first one went live today and featured author, wordsmith, a very dear friend, Mandy Haynes, and it just was a joy to talk to her. She made the whole thing very easy, but I can sympathize with you because I do think there's a learning curve on the production, and the software is available to work at home and you can do all the recording at home. So it's something accessible for creatives, but it
looks
is
like you're in a
learning
sound
curve.
studio. Do you have?
My
Are you in a sound
son-
studio? Yeah, because I have actually spent the past year learning and working towards this goal, but I had certain standards. I did see very briefly, just your maybe a website or started to listen to, but I've been kind of busy today too. But I'm excited for you. That's a wonderful
Oh,
thing.
Thank you.
listen, I was listening to it today and I was crying. It was so beautiful that I reached out to Teresa and then she emails me and said, let's talk. We're going to talk. And she was crying and Mandy was crying. And I go, if we all can work together, Robert and Mickey and Lovelace and Kathleen and Teresa, if we can all work together, what a wonderful world this is going to be. I mean, to me, I don't have any agenda other than I'm trying to promote all of you. That's my whole life. I feel like I grew up in a family of storytellers. And I mean, and some people might say liars, just making stories up. But to me, those stories help me figure out things, in my own life. I know when I read the Lords of Discipline and then the Great Santini, I knew that I was not alone. And Pat Conroy is for his body of work, my favorite, all-time favorite author. But there's been other stories that have made me understand how, my family was very dysfunctional. So how to navigate in a world where I have created my own world. And a lot of people go, well, you live in the woods and you're living in your imagination. I go, it's a really wonderful place. And I don't know if you guys have seen this, but tonight, this is the painting I just finished that's behind me that I'm very excited about. I got lost in that place. And here's another one on the floor that I've been lost in. And I create my art, I write, and I share stories. And those are my passions. And I think there's enough room in this world for everybody. I don't think we have to say, oh, well, I'm not a competitor in that way. I go, if we would all just work together and get everybody on the same page that reading and storytelling is important, then we're all going to have better experiences in life and we're going to have better understanding, more empathy, more kindness for other people that are different than ourselves. Because I guarantee you, every single one of us here has the most different upbringing from each other. There'll be similarities, but wouldn't life be boring if everybody was just like you? I'm sick of myself right now. That's why I like to play other people. And because I'm tired of talking about the Pulpwood Queen. I want to talk about all of you. So here we are, and I am thrilled for both of you. So we need to somehow get you guys share emails. So because you have a background in this already with news station work, Teresa, you've worked in and then I'm telling you, Lovelace has been to India and she does amazing, remarkable philanthropic work and all kinds. And she's very much one that, like me, loves other cultures. So, and all of us have our gifts and talents, like Robert. Oh my gosh. And when I think about it, I met Robert for the first time at Girlfriend Weekend. And I thought, first of all, it takes a real man that is secure in his own person to come to Girlfriend Weekend, especially since it's a slumber party. But he participated in everything. And I was so impressed that I wanted to know more about him. And now look, he's now the co-host of our film club. Mandy, who came forward and said she wanted to volunteer to help me put on Girlfriend Weekend, she's now the executive director of my book club. So there's room for everybody at my table. There's room for everybody, and let's just get more people on board, and let's change the world through reading.
Absolutely. And Kathy, I'm so excited for Lovelace and for Teresa. I actually had an opportunity to listen to Teresa's inaugural podcast today, and it was beautiful. And it had the same impact on me hearing her read Mandy's work. I was eating an early dinner and I was just weeping in the kitchen alone. But it was beautiful, and the production value and the quality of the talent. I mean, I was just so impressed. So I'm so excited. I can't wait to hear your next episodes.
Me too. And I can't wait. Let us know when you start yours, Lovelace, and let us know when your next one airs. I will share it with the world, you guys, because if you just tag me or email me and say, how can I get the information? I got this story, that story. I am being hit. People go, well, you didn't put this up for me. And I go, you guys, there's not enough time in the day for me to see everything that's being put up there on social media. I spend an enormous amount of time. In fact, this morning, I spent most of my time in my bed with the electric blanket on because during the ice storm, I lost water, I lost heat, electricity, and they're trying to get parts. The reason why I'm wearing the fur coat is not so much to be Elizabeth Taylor, but I'm cold. My house is freezing. So anyway, but the show must go on, So thank you all for joining me. Any last words, Robert? Are you going to be ready for next week?
I will be ready.
Okay.
And it's been wonderful. And I'm so excited to see Mickey and Kathleen and Teresa and Lovelace tonight. Thank you guys for coming out.
Thank you for joining us. And you want to jump on because I'm going to let you talk about your stuff every time. And this is all being recorded. It's all going up on my YouTube channel. So it takes a little while to do that. By tomorrow morning, you can, if you'll click that subscribe and click that little bell icon, it'll tell you when it goes live, and I'll share it on Breathless Bubbles and Books. I will share it on my international page, and I have blogger friends that we share each other's stuff. So it'll be going out there, and you can put it up on your website. It's just another way to share what you're doing. So the more you get on, the more you're going to get promoted. And I want to let everybody have an opportunity to have a say in everything that we do. So thank you for joining us. Now it's time to pop some popcorn, get me a refresh in my drink, and then I'm going to go watch that movie again because it's been a while since I've watched it, and it's one of my favorites. And then be sure and subscribe. So thank you all for joining me. Robert, I love you. And I've already mentioned Teresa. Yeah, I didn't know about you, Lovelace, but I already mentioned you guys. We need to get you guys all connected so that these podcasters can get our authors up there because you all have great stories, and I am happy to share them with everybody. So you all have a good evening. It's all about the story, and we'll see you next week at the movies.
Later, y'all.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, you're welcome.